Hey guys, Kyle Kulinski is letting us post some of the clips from his channel that we think you guys will really love in the Breaking Points community on our channel.
Yep, let's get to it.
New York Times article, our man Bernie Sanders prepares for war with AIPAC and its super PAC. The pro-Israel group, which is involved with direct political spending this year for the first time, has opposed progressive candidates backed by Mr. Sanders. Senator Bernie Sanders, the progressive, by the way, this is by Shane Goldmacher. Senator Bernie Sanders, the progressive former presidential candidate who rose to prominence in part by denouncing the influence of wealthy interests in politics, has a new target in his sights, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee and its affiliated super PAC, which is spending heavily in Democratic primaries for the first time this year. After Mr. Sanders traveled last week to Pittsburgh to campaign for Summer Lee, a liberal state legislator whose House campaign was opposed by millions of dollars in such spending, he is now headed to Texas. There, he is aiming to lift up another progressive congressional candidate, Jessica Cisneros, whose left-wing challenge of a moderate incumbent has been met with significant spending from the pro-Israel super PAC. So, this is something that we've seen a lot recently. Nina Turner was defeated by a flood of AIPAC money and a flood of money from, honestly, even Republican billionaires who preferred Shontel Brown to Nina Turner because Nina is an actual fighter, she's a leader, and she's going to be unapologetic in fighting for the policies that we believe in, or most of us believe in. Bernie's now going to go after AIPAC because AIPAC is going after all of his preferred progressive candidates. Now, Jessica Cisneros, she's running against Henry Cuellar, however you say it. And he is, I think, the only pro-life Democrat in the House, anti-abortion Democrat in the House. And he's voted in such a way. Now remember, this is at a time where Roe v. Wade is about to be overturned. And you have Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and Democratic leaders posturing as if, like, don't worry, we'll protect the right to choose and we're going to fight for the right to choose as they campaign for a pro-life, anti-choice Democrat. Now, Cuellar has gone very dirty in this campaign against Cisneros. Cisneros almost beat Cuellar in a recent election. I mean, she came up just short. So she has a chance to win, but there's a flood of money against her. So one of the things Cuellar is doing is outright lying. He's under FBI investigation, and he lied and said he was, like, cleared by the FBI. Just total lie. The other thing he's doing is trying to dig up dirt on Cisneros' personal life, and they're running ads calling her a homewrecker. What is that? That doesn't have anything to do with any policy, and you are noticing the trick here. The corporate Democrats can't win in policy discussions, so they just change the conversation. And so he's propped up, as many of these corporate candidates are, by an endless flow of AIPAC money and corporate money, whereas Jessica Cisneros is not. This is a war, Mr. Sanders said in an interview, for the future of the Democratic Party. AIPAC has long been a bipartisan organization, and its entry this year into direct political spending has included giving to both Democrats and Republicans. That has earned the ire of Mr. Sanders and other progressives because the group Super PAC also ran ads attacking Miss Lee as an insufficiently loyal Democrat. So Summer Lee was up massively in her election against, I think it was Steve Irwin, not the crocodile hunter, but a different Steve Irwin. And then AIPAC came in the final month or so and dumped so much money in there, about I think it was millions, maybe $3 million, and Steve Irwin almost made up the difference and won. Again, that's a direct result of that money. All the King's horses and all the King's men getting involved to try to get Steve Irwin over the line. Lee hung on, thank God, but yeah, this is a war. And a lot of what AIPAC is doing is they're afraid that some of these new, more left Democrats are not going to be sufficiently pro-Israel. So in other words, they're going to believe in Palestinian human rights, and that's egregious, and that goes way too far, and so they're trying to crush them with money. Quote, why would an organization go around criticizing someone like Summer Lee for not being a strong enough Democrat when they themselves have endorsed extreme right-wing Republicans? True, Mr. Sanders said. In my view, their goal is to create a two-party system, Democrats and Republicans, in which both parties are responsive to the needs of corporate America and the billionaire class. True. And by the way, to this point, they've largely won, because Democrats are swimming in corporate money as well. Mr. Sanders specifically called out the committee for donating to congressional Republicans who refused to certify the 2020 election, while its super PAC, the United Democracy Project, has framed itself as a pro-democracy group. Hilarious. They're frauds. They're total frauds. Quote, that just exposes the hypocrisy, Mr. Sanders said. Marshall Whitman, a spokesman for AIPAC, said in response to Sanders, who is Jewish, that the group, quote, will not be intimidated in our efforts to elect pro-Israel candidates, including scores of pro-Israel progressives. Yeah, but that's the thing. These so-called progressives who are pro-Israel are not actually progressives. They're the biggest posers in the Congressional Progressive Caucus. Like Shontel Brown. Okay, you want to endorse Shontel Brown? She's also part of the New Democrat Coalition, which is totally contradictory to being a progressive. It's the total opposite philosophy in the Democratic Party. Quote, it is very revealing that someone that some who don't take issue with super PAC support for anti-Israel candidates get indignant when pro-Israel activists use the same tools, Mr. Whitman said. The three candidates that Mr. Sanders has been most personally invested in backing so far have also had all super PAC support, though two were heavily outspent. Despite more than $3 million in opposition spending from pro-Israel groups, Ms. Lee is narrowly ahead in her primary against Steve Irwin, a lawyer. The Associated Press has not yet called the race. Since this article's come out, they have called the race. In North Carolina, Nida Alam, the Sanders-backed candidate, lost to Valerie Foushee, a state legislator, in an open congressional race. Ms. Foushee's campaign was supported by nearly $3.5 million in spending from two pro-Israel groups and a super PAC linked to a cryptocurrency billionaire. Super PAC spending for Ms. Alam was $370,000. So in other words, you have these like smaller progressive groups, like I don't know if Justice Democrats back Nida Alam, they probably did, but I think they back Summer Lee, they're backing Cisneros. It's small potatoes. It's not really all that much money, whereas the pro-Israel group AIPAC is just all in, they're flush with cash, and they could crush with money. Maya Honda, Ms. Alam's campaign manager, said Mr. Sanders' megaphone, heated robocalls, sent a fundraising email to his giant list, and held a virtual event, brought invaluable attention to the outside money flooding in the race. The message broke through to some voters. In Hillsborough, Elsie Stutz, 44, a bookseller, had been planning to vote for Ms. Foushee. However, on election day, Ms. Stutz said she was turned off after learning about the origin of the super PAC money that helped Ms. Foushee's campaign. Ms. Foushee ultimately won the Democratic primary for a district that includes several major universities, including Duke and the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and where Mr. Sanders registered 83% favorability among Democratic primary voters in the Alam campaign's polling. Mr. Sanders has sparred with pro-Israel groups over the years, including during his 2020 presidential run, when a group called the Democratic Majority for Israel PAC spent money to attack him when he emerged as a frontrunner early in the primary season. And when one of Mr. Sanders' national co-chairs, Nina Turner, ran for Congress in a special election in 2021 and again in 2022, the group and the AIPAC Alliance Super PAC both spent heavily to defeat her. Quote, I understand Senator Sanders' grudge against us, said Mark Mellman, the president of Democratic Majority for Israel PAC. We helped prevent him from winning Iowa in the presidential nomination. Then we helped stop his campaign chair from winning a House race in Cleveland. Honestly, I wouldn't be happy with us either if I were him. Yeah, but here's the thing. It's not even personal from Bernie. He doesn't agree with your politics because your politics are terrible. That's the thing. If you had good politics, he'd have no problem with you getting involved in the race. But you have terrible politics, and you want people to overlook human rights abuses in Israel. You want people to support a vicious right-wing Israeli government that does apartheid and ethnic cleansing. And you want big money to run politics, and he doesn't like any of those things. Mr. Sanders said that his battle with AIPAC wasn't personal and that he didn't even see it as being about Israel. Quote, they are doing everything they can to destroy the progressive movement in this country, he said. Mr. Sanders' next clash with AIPAC is the May 24th runoff in Texas between Cisneros and Henry Cuellar. The contest has included more than $6 million in super PAC spending, of which less than one-third, $1.8 million, has come from the United Democracy Project. There are likely to be more clashes to come. The United Democracy Project is evaluating 10 to 15 more races. Our goal is to build the broadest pro-Israel bipartisan coalition possible in Congress, said Patrick Dorton, a spokesperson for the Super PAC. Look, this has to be said, but this group, like AIPAC and all these affiliated groups, they are not helping this stereotype that, hey man, big Jewish money controls politics. They do everything they can to try to prove that stereotype true. Now, by the way, it's not true. There isn't some, like, secret Jewish cabal that's running everything, so, like, the JQ people, the Jewish question people, are not correct, and there is a lot of anti-Semitism tied to that. But this is a pro-Israel group that is doing everything it can to control not only the direction of the country, but the direction of the Democratic Party. AIPAC is doing everything they can to make it so that pro-Palestinian voices get drowned out. And then if you dare point out that fact, that objective fact, which is out in the open for everybody to see, they'll still turn around and call you an anti-Semite. It truly is astonishing. It truly is astonishing. Let's see, where was I? Mr. Sanders knows that he won't win each confrontation. The goal of speaking out, he said, was twofold: to create some political cost for the super PACs that engage, and for people to understand when they see these ads on television and why they're being played. Mr. Sanders also rallied against the crypto billionaires who are pouring money into Democratic primaries, including more than $11 million into a single House seat in Oregon. Outrageous, he said. In a letter this week to Jamie Harrison, the chairman of the Democratic National Committee, Mr. Sanders urged the party to reject super PAC spending more broadly, at least in primaries. Quote, what we have to do is not just talk the talk, we've got to walk the walk, he said. The two men spoke after the letter this week, though little is expected to come of the issue. Of course little is expected to come of the issue because they are massively corrupt. So, look, this is a no-brainer. This is like the real litmus test in terms of whether or not candidates are acceptable, is like, Do they say no corporate PAC money, and do they try to raise most of their money through small individual donations? Now, you could have a debate and a disagreement around the edges when it comes to, like, union PAC money, for example. There are gray areas in terms of fundraising where, on the one hand, you can make an argument just no PAC money at all. On the other hand, you say, well, why would you disarm and not take union money when union money, if anything, will just make you more pro-worker? So there's a debate in the gray area and around the edges. But where there's not a debate is corporate PAC money, and where there's not a debate is just big money from billionaires that have all these, nefarious connections. Big money from billionaires that'll make you more pro-corporate or more pro-whatever industry, fill in the blank, health insurance industry, military-industrial complex, etc. So Bernie's like, let's just, not take any super PAC money. And, of course, the Democrats are not going to do that because a very large percentage of the Democrats are massively corrupt. So he's declaring war on AIPAC, and I like that, but it's going to take more than just Bernie Sanders. It's going to take, a strong left-based progressive movement that sees through all this crap. But unfortunately, I don't think awareness is high enough on this sort of stuff. And the results are you're going to have some races where there's good candidates who get drowned out by millions and millions in AIPAC money. So everybody be aware. I mean, look, honestly, I don't like to do this politics of like, these are the people that I'm against, so I'll just go for whoever they're against. But in all seriousness, when it comes to progressive primaries, whichever candidates are being funded by AIPAC, that is a phenomenal sign that not only are they being funded by AIPAC, they're also being funded by Republican billionaires. They're also being funded by various corporate interests and lobbyists. And it is a solid bet in every Democratic primary that if you support the candidate who's not funded by AIPAC, you're supporting the better candidate on the actual policy issues. So it's a nice little cheat code for you. It's a nice little mental hack for you. So what these candidates are bringing to the table. But look, I'll cheer Bernie on in his fight here against AIPAC. He's going to need it because they're super well funded. They have a lot of clout. And this is the first time that I've seen that you have, some elected official with power actually using their voice to go after these nefarious forces, trying to steer the Democratic Party further into a ditch and make them even more pro-corporate.
Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.